The movie begins with a woman named Penelope. She is the wife of a man named Andrea, but she is unhappy with her married life because Andrea is having an affair with someone else. One day she wanted to talk to Andrea about his affair, despite the fact he lied and avoided her. Meanwhile, Penelope was in the marriage because of her kids for many years. One night she left home. She left a letter to Andrea in which she wrote about how Andrea would take care of the house and the children because Penelope had been doing all of the work for years. Penelope also wrote that she got married at a young age. She was living as a victim, like many women in the world. While she was constantly being lied to for the first time in her life, Penelope leaves Andrea with responsibilities, and she goes to her grandmother's house for a few days. Upon reaching the house, she finds that for years no one lived, and there was no electricity connection in that house. Meanwhile, Andrea tried to talk to Penelope, but she didn't hear a word from Andrea. Moreover, their children started hating her, and it was getting difficult for Andrea to take care of them. Later in the day, Penelope went to meet her grandmother's neighbor because her house had no water. On the other hand, Andrea had an affair with Stefania. She works in his office, and Stefania tells the truth to Penelope out of remorse. Andrea was getting in trouble on the other hand. Penelope was enjoying far away from her responsibilities. While releasing, she started remembering her childhood, when she used to learn piano from her grandmother. Penelope's grandmother was a noblewoman, but she didn't know how to handle money. So her daughter Irene was trying to save the house with the help of a lawyer, and that was the first time Penelope met Andrea. And since then, she has started loving him. She was close to Briganti, and Briganti used to tell her stories. One day, Penelope discovered that Irene was having an affair with the same lawyer named Giovanni. However, she didn't tell anyone about them, and started hating Irene, in the present. The news of Penelope's departure reaches Irene, and she explains that it would be her biggest mistake to do so. But Penelope flinches at her decision. While Andrea slowly learns to take care of the children, and for the first time he learns about his children's lives, giving her all the responsibilities. His youngest son Luca was doing the work. Penelope began to repair her grandmother's house. She tried to talk to Luca, but Luca was angry with her mother, so he did not speak properly. After some time, she remembers the day her grandmother was sick. After spending time with Penelope, she recovered. Dorima was closer to Penelope than Irene, and preferred to be with her in her last days. After the death of her grandmother, Penelope was living alone. And then one day, Andrea and his friend had an accident outside her house, and then Andrea spoke to her for the first time, and then after some time left. After that, Penelope would tell her mother every day that she was going to study at the Briganti house, and with that excuse, she began to spend time with Andrea. On the other hand, Andrea realized his mistake, and started looking at Penelope's things that he kept. He found some letters, but Andrea didn't read those letters. The next day, Andrea wrote the letter, apologized to Penelope, and said he could not live without her. He also asked about the ladder that he found. And after thinking for several days, Penelope decided to write a letter and tell Andrea everything about the letters that had been a secret until now. 2 years ago, she went to buy a new piano, and then a strange man approached her. Penelope ignored that man, and then the man started following Penelope and tried to talk to her. Carlos was a painter who fell in love with Penelope as soon as he saw her. He was disappointed when he found out that Penelope was married, but Carlos did not give up and asked for Penelope's address at a piano store. Sent a gift for her. That's how Carlos and Penelope started talking one day. Carlos invites her to his exhibition. During the exhibition, Carlos again says that he is in love with Penelope, and after hearing that, Penelope decides to return home. A few days later, Carlos came to the college where Penelope taught piano lessons, and gradually their friendship grew. Penelope also started to like Carlos, however. She did not want to cheat on Andrea. Meanwhile, Carlos was trying hard, and he refused to give up on her, and that's why Penelope started to like his actions. Meanwhile, after some days, Andrea went to France for work, and in France, he met a beautiful model named Eve on the pretext of interviewing Eve. He tries to find out about her private life. On the other hand, Penelope was still taking care of her children. One day, when she calls Andrea's hotel room, she finds out that he is staying with Eve in the room. She didn't say anything about it to her children at that time, but her heart broke when. She was angry and sad, so she called Carlos. She felt better talking to Carlos about her problem, and then she decided she would not tire of Carlos's love. She went to meet him, and she started an affair. Some days passed, and there were no changes in Penelope's house. However, there was a change in her personal life, and she was happy to spend time with Carlos. One day, Carlos tells her that he wants to marry Penelope, and he also wants to adopt Penelope's children. However, it is not easy for Penelope to divorce Andrea. In the present, Andrea is angry at Penelope after knowing she has fallen in love with Carlos, and Andrea begins to speak ill of her. On the other hand, Irene came to meet Penelope and told her that she should fix her marriage, not the house. Penelope had also told her about Carlos. Meanwhile, Penelope says that Carlos has been gone from her life for many years, while Irene says that she always knew that Penelope saw her with Augioni, so she has not forgiven herself until now. Penelope and Irene have the same situation, and she can't leave her family despite loving someone else. A few days later, Andrea's daughter Lucia's boyfriend met Andrea and told her that Lucia started to like someone else, but Andrea told her that if he truly loved Lucia, he should never give up. Later in the day, Andrea goes to Lucia's gym to find out about the new boy and tries to keep the boy named Raul away from Lucia. She tells Lucia that Raul is not a good boy, but Lucia doesn't listen to him. One day, Penelope went to meet Carlos at his house, but Carlos didn't want to meet her. Penelope still went to him and tried to talk to him. They hadn't seen each other for the past 2 years, and today when they met, Carlos told her that he had cancer. He never wanted to tell Penelope this, because he didn't want her love through illness. Penelope stopped by Carlos that night, and Carlos began talking to her about the life he dreamed of having one last time with Penelope. Late at night, Carlos moved away from the house the following morning. Knowing this, Penelope was worried because Carlos would never see her again after that day. She went back to her old life and slowly started living alone. She started thinking about how her grandmother said there was no pain in life, so she didn't like to live that life. And thinking about that, she started to take care of herself. She thought the life of cats was better because after having children, cats are not burdened by their husbands. And while thinking about that, she started crying. One day, suddenly Luca faints at school, and Penelope returns to her house as soon as possible to meet him. At the hospital, Penelope was told that Luca had fainted due to stress, and that it was imperative for him to be happy. Penelope decided to repair her marriage that day and take Luca, and went to her grandmother's house. She now spends more time with Luca, and invites her parents to stay with her. One night, Irene tells Penelope that Andrea has changed, and she should get another chance. And that night, Andrea read the news of Carlos's death. The news of his death, and then he decided to read the letters written by Carlos. By reading these letters, Andrea found out that Penelope had left Carlos because she loved Andrea. Andrea went to see Penelope without wasting time and invited her to this place, where both of them used to spend time in childhood. Penelope and Andrea decide to meet at Chiro's cafe, and then Penelope reveals that she is pregnant. Andrea knew the child was Carlos's, but he wanted to adopt the child because he loved Penelope, took over and started living with each other again like they used to do in my childhood. Thank you for watching this video. If you like this video, please like, share, and comment on this video. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel.